Thursday to the Ungovernables, the Captain's Crew, the LFA family, McGroin Nation, coming to you live from the deep red state of Tennessee on rumble.com/LFA TV. Welcome to Ungoverned. Happy Thursday. Did I say Tuesday before? No, I said Thursday, I think. Happy Thursday to everybody. We have a really good one today. Big Scotus ruling, Supreme Court of the United States, hearing a case on redistricting. Now, I got into some of the details of it, and it's very confusing stuff, but I tried to get a common sense summary underway for you, so we will talk about that one. That's a big one. That's a big one. Potentially massive implications when it comes to how our congressional district lines are drawn. And you know, the fight over redistricting, well, this fight may wind up tipping even further in favor of Republicans if this ruling comes down, or is even, if we don't get the full thing where they say race-based, redistricting violates the 14th Amendment Equal Protection Clause of the Constitution, even if it narrows the interpretation of Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act, you could be seeing some major changes to how district lines are drawn, potential to around 20 seats could switch hands. Is it going to be done in time for the 2026 midterms? That I don't know. But going forward, so think maybe we win 2026. These rulings and all of that stuff shakes out and gets settled by 28. You've got Vance running for president. You've got a much friendlier political landscape in terms of the Republican House. Are you giving J.D. Vance a large majority in the House of Representatives? Are you giving him a sizable majority in the Senate? I mean, this is the type of stuff. These are the type of things that we are. These are the type of things that that we could look forward to, but they're not the most fun to talk about. I'll say that they're not the most fun. It's kind of I don't want to say boring, right? But it's kind of clunky and in depth. So we're gonna get to it. But I've got a bunch of really funny video clips not related to the Supreme Court ruling. But I do want to talk about the Supreme Court ruling. And I do have a very funny clip from the Supreme Court case, the hearing yesterday. Ketanji Brown Jackson, the dumbest Supreme Court justice in the history of Supreme Court justices. Not just, they're going to go, well, you're saying that because she's black? No, I'm saying that because of how she talks. And what she said. If a white person said what she said yesterday, there would be calls to impeach her from the Supreme Court. So we'll get to that. Now, you guys know how much I enjoy a good little bit of John Fetterman, right? I've got a clip of him. Listen, you guys are going to be in for a big treat, okay? Because I'm going to give you a little bit of inside baseball in terms of how, when I prep these shows, what I do. When I have a topic, remember when we went over what is a rescissions package when the news cycle was really slow, and it was here's how a rescissions package passed. And it's good, it's informational, but when I have a story about the Supreme Court, and it's a big deal, I get it. I got to find a bunch of video that's also funny so we can have a good time while we're talking about the serious things. So I've got a clip from Fetterman that's great. I got a Pelosi. She exploded. She erupted. This little woman who's being helped. She's walking and then she just goes, "Shut up!" And she started going crazy. The spit was flying everywhere, so I've got one of those. I've got a clip from Harry Enton, our favorite pollster or poll guy. He breaks down the polls. Should we call him a poll dancer, Harry Enton? Because he breaks down the polls on CNN. I might call him our favorite poll dancer. That's gross. Harry Enton. I got a clip from him. We may not get to that. I've got the Pelosi one. I've got Fetterman. Donald Trump, the great Matt Brown sent me this clip of Donald Trump yesterday. I don't know. I have a feeling he's getting annoyed with Bondi, but I've been saying that for a while, and then he comes out and says she's doing a great job. I got a clip from Bernie and AOC on CNN. I've got the funniest clip on the internet today. Kamala Harris said something real stupid. We're going to get to that. We'll get to all sorts of fun stuff, and of course the Supreme Court ruling. Or the upcoming Supreme Court ruling. So we will get to all that and more. Before we do that, of course, we got to get to a word from our good friends over at OFPFarms.com. That's OFP Oscar Foxtrot PapaFarms.com. OFPFarms.com. Every good day starts with OFP Farms. That's why they're up at the beginning of the show every day. Every good day starts with OFP Farms. You know, your daily routine, your morning routine. If OFP Farms is a part of your daily routine and your morning routine, you've got a lot to look forward to for that day. Now, I encourage you, anybody who's watching, listening, if you're new, if you're old, go to OFPFarms.com. Explore the wonderful quality of Faith Farm and Freedom products with a special limited time 15% discount on your entire purchase. Take a peek at this amazing lineup at OFP Farms. They are America's go-to soap company, famous for natural ingredients, the skin-loving perks of tallow and goat milk, and a big heart for farm-to-family skincare. Oh, and by the way, they're amazing patriots who make soap called We the People. When you smell this soap, right? Oh, that's right. It smells like the preamble, just the preamble, not the rest of the Constitution. It smells like the preamble to the United States Constitution. So check out that We the People soap. Check out their entire collection. Whether you're looking for gentle skincare, maybe you're looking for thoughtful gifts, their products bring together expert care and good values to make your daily routine better. Do not miss this chance to enjoy these premium products that support your health and ethical choices for your whole family at a 15% discount at OFP Farms. It's OFP Oscar Foxtrot PapaFarms.com. OFP Farms. OFP Oscar Foxtrot PapaFarms.com. Promo code Sean. Use the code Sean at checkout. 15% off of anything on the website, including my favorite product, the Goat Kisses Lip Balm. I love the Goat Kisses Lip Balm. I use it every day. I've been using it for over 2 straight years. It is the crapstick killer. Chapstick, obviously owned by Pfizer. OFP Farms, owned by our good friends. As you can see in our live chat, you can see why is it not going? All right, it'll eventually go. Oh, that's right, because I turned off Bluetooth on my computer, so the keyboard's not working. All right, let's go to this. I'll show you right there. Boom, there he is. You see Papa OFP Farms scrolling up, saying thank you, Kit Kat, right there. That's one of the owners of OFP Farms. We love him. Papa OFP Farms, that is Corey, and you will love him. You will love his wife, Denise. They are great people. So OFPFarms.com, promo code Sean, SHAWN, for 15% off. All right. Let's get to the Supreme Court ruling. Actually, let's get to the funniest clip on the internet first, and then we'll jump into the Supreme Court ruling. Did you hear Kamala Harris? You know, she's got a book tour going on, which is a book that she obviously did not write. Okay? She obviously did not write. Did you hear some of the things that she said? Like last week, she was like, oh, it was the closest election in modern history. Really? You lost the popular vote. You know how hard it is for Democrats to lose the popular vote? When you're dealing with places like California and New York at the state level, but really at the city level, when you're dealing with massive Democrat concentrations in Dallas, in Los Angeles, in San Francisco, in Sacramento, in Oakland, right? In New York City, in Atlanta, in Chicago, in Seattle, in Portland, in Houston, in San Antonio. You know, we can go in Detroit. You can go through Philadelphia, right? You can go through so many of these cities, Boston, Minneapolis, these huge cities in the United States. They are dominated by Democrats, okay? Dominated in terms of the electorate, okay? And in terms of who's been elected, but dominated by Democrats. Dominated by Democrats. So you have these massive Democrat strongholds. If you lose the popular vote, you suck as a candidate, okay? If you're a Democrat. But Kamala Harris said it was the closest election in history. And then yesterday, she said something even crazier. I'm not even going to say it. She's going to say it for me. This is the funniest thing I think I've ever heard. Watch.
That is a decent resume, but go ahead.
Well, some people have actually said I was the most qualified candidate ever to run for president.
I like the some people say. Very nice, but go ahead.
I'm just speaking fact.
Yeah.
You know, it's really funny because the host of that conversation even thought it was a joke. The host of that conversation thought that Kamala was taking a shot at Trump because he goes, some people say, a lot of people are saying. The host of the conversation even thought that was a joke. Did you catch that? And Kamala was like, she almost went full Biden. It's not a joke, man. It's not a joke. I'm the most qualified person to run for president, man. So it's malarkey. Kamala Harris was the most qualified. She didn't win a primary. She was the invisible vice president. She was historically unlikable until the Democrat cult said, you must like Kamala Harris. One of us, right? You must like Kamala Harris now. And then the NPCs were like, they took their little chip and they were like, go Joe, go Kamala, right? It was most qualified. She's earned nothing her whole life. Most qualified. Now, there are some positions that if she chose to occupy them, that she would be very qualified for, given her past body of work, And if you can catch what I'm, hinting at, maybe she's qualified for something like that. All right. I'm just saying, not president, most qualified. And the host was like, yeah, I love how you said some people say, and Kamala was like, no. Like, I really was the most qualified. Are you kidding me? Who are these people? Who are these people? We're like, Kamala, you were the most qualified person to ever run. Really? Okay. So she, who didn't win a primary, never served as president, was invisible as vice president, was more qualified than Donald Trump, who served as president for 4 years, like had all the experience, won 3 primaries. He won in 16, 20, and 24. Right? Had the experience, has been through all of it, still had the connections. So she was more qualified than him? No. Okay. All right, let's get to the Supreme Court case because this is very important. Supreme Court, red state, could a Supreme Court decision in Louisiana versus Calais end Democrat redistricting scams once and for all? Let's hope so. Let's hope so. This case right now, this Louisiana versus Calais case, I don't know how to pronounce it, but that doesn't really matter, is challenging Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act. Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act essentially says that congressional districts have to take into account or should take into account the race of their constituents, the race of the residents, and how they vote when you're drawing those lines, right? And there are people who are suing now because for a long time, let's say, for all intents and purposes, a district was overwhelmingly populated by black residents. And black residents overwhelmingly, like for a long time, almost unanimously voted Democrat, right? But that's starting to change, especially among black men, right? But they would say, oh, well, you're excluding the race and now you're excluding their party. And these folks can't vote for a candidate of their choice, or a candidate of their choice isn't going to win. And so they're never going to be represented. But then there were challenges to this whole idea of race-based gerrymandering, right? Race-based gerrymandering. There were challenges to this idea because the 14th Amendment of the Constitution, the Equal Protection Clause, says that you can't classify or discriminate by race, right? So essentially here, no state or local government, Section 2 essentially says, no state or local government can use any voting rule, process, or congressional map at all, district map, that effectively denies or weakens a person's right to vote because of race or color. Now, this isn't denying or weakening anybody's right to vote, but their representation, in voting for their preferred candidate or being represented by a Democrat, right? It comes down to that question. It's very gray area type stuff. Now, in order to prove that there was a violation against Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act, you don't have to show intentional racism, only that in practice, the system results in unequal opportunity for minority voters. The courts have looked at the totality of circumstances, things like history, turnout, district shapes, etc. Importantly, the law does not guarantee proportional representation. So if 30% of the voters are black, it doesn't mean that 30% of the seats must be black majority. It only guarantees an equal opportunity to elect preferred candidates. Section 2 bans any voting rule or map that results in what's known as racial inequality and political opportunity, but it does not require proportional outcomes or explicitly say that maps must be drawn using race. So what states have essentially done is, in order to avoid being seen as violating Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act, they have drawn race-based maps. They've kind of gone overboard. They say, oh, look, we're drawing black districts here, so you can't come after us for Section 2. To try and comply with Section 2, even though there's no actual mandate to do so, now what's happening is, in Louisiana, some of the districts are being challenged because they were essentially drawn out of race altogether, and they are using the Equal Protection Clause as a means of making that challenge, right? So again, the Voting Rights Act says that states can't draw maps that essentially dilute the minority vote, or not that they can't, but that they shouldn't, right? It kind of pressures states to use race to protect minority voting rights. But the Equal Protection Clause, the 14th Amendment, limits the government's ability to classify or separate people by race. So there's which one wins out, right? Which one wins out? The Voting Rights Act does not explicitly require racial line drawing, but court interpretations of the Voting Rights Act have often made it functionally necessary to consider race to comply with Section 2, especially in states with history of racially polarized voting. The current Supreme Court seems poised to scale that back, possibly ruling that Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act cannot be used to force states to draw districts with race as a main factor. Here is part of this article on Red State, kind of sums it up a little bit. It's very confusing. But it's also, it starts to make sense when you think about how Section 2, essentially of the Voting Rights Act, Section 2 has been weaponized to force states to draw racial districts versus actual, demographic and congressional districts. Because all someone would have to do is go, you're cutting out, black voices. You're cutting out a Democrat seat. Well, A, black people don't vote as a monolith anymore. And B, Section 2 actually does not mandate that because it can't, because of the Equal Protection Clause in the 14th Amendment. So here we go. The Supreme Court could soon change how every congressional map in America is drawn, including in California. The court hears hard arguments yesterday in Calais versus Louisiana, a case that could reshape redistricting for decades. For years, federal courts have interpreted the Voting Rights Act to require states to gerrymander congressional districts so minority groups are virtually guaranteed the ability to elect a representative of their same race. Calais challenges that approach, arguing that the current interpretation of the VRA, Voting Rights Act, violates the Equal Protection Clause of the U.S. Constitution because it forces states to make race the predominant factor in drawing district lines, and the Equal Protection Clause says that you cannot use race as a predominant factor in anything, drawing district lines in anything. When districts are drawn to guarantee that one party always wins, it shifts power away from the people and towards special interests. It lets political insiders and activist groups pick the politicians who govern us rather than letting voters choose their own representatives. If the court agrees with Calais, the decision could dramatically limit the use of race in redistricting nationwide. That means the gerrymandered maps that Gavin Newsom is pushing in Proposition 50 in California, which we need to vote no, could be ruled unconstitutional because they are using race as the determining factor for the way they're drawn, which is a violation of the 14th Amendment and the Equal Protection Clause. This is huge. This is huge. And from all indications, right, from all of the reporting surrounding it, whether it's from Jonathan Turley, whether it's this article on Red State, whether it's freakouts happening over on Politico, it sounds like Section 2 is not going to just get overturned and be completely obliterated, right, in terms of how the courts are going to see it, but they're going to scale back essentially what it forces states to do. Louisiana is being challenged by civil rights groups and that equal protection argument. I think you're going to see a favorable ruling out of the Supreme Court. The question is it in time for 2026, and can states fix these problems before the 2026 midterms? I don't know. But let me show you what Ketanji Brown Jackson said yesterday. You know, she's the I don't know what a woman is. Remember her? What is a woman? I'm not a biologist. Yeah. The dumbest Supreme Court nominee probably in the history of Supreme Court nominees. And I'm not just saying that because I don't like her politics or her worldview. She's stupid. Listen to what she said yesterday during these oral arguments.
I guess I'm thinking of the fact that remedial action, absent discriminatory intent, is really not a new idea in the civil rights laws. And my kind of paradigmatic example of this is something like the ADA. Congress passed the Americans with Disabilities Act against the backdrop of a world that was generally not accessible to people with disabilities. And so it was discriminatory in effect because these folks were not able to access these buildings. And it didn't matter whether the person who built the building or the person who owned the building intended for them to be exclusionary. That's irrelevant. Congress said the facilities have to be made equally open to people with disabilities if readily possible. I guess I don't understand why that's not what's happening here. The idea in Section 2 is that we are responding to current day manifestations of past and present decisions that disadvantage minorities and make it so that they don't have equal access to the voting system, right? They're disabled. In fact, we use the word disable in Milligan. We say that's a way in which you see that these processes are not equally open.
Okay, so according to Ketanji Brown Jackson, black voters are disabled.
Horrible, horrible, stupid thing to say.
Okay, so I mean, I'm just gonna say something right now. I don't view being black as a disability.
No.
Do you? Do you? Yeah, I don't know. Maybe some of the young Republicans. I can't take it. Could you understand how racist the Democrat Party is? It is, yeah, they're going to put you all back in chains. Joe Biden said he didn't want Joe Biden said he did not want his children going to school in a racial jungle. Are you kidding me? And remember when he called Barack Obama? He was like, he's one of the clean black people I know. Clean? What are you saying? Remember Kathy Hochul? The young black kids in the Bronx who don't know what a computer is. And then there was that guy who acted like a monkey online, that black guy. Oh, yeah. And he was like a caveman. He was like batting the computer around like he didn't know what it was.
That was so funny.
With that playing in the back.
He was trolling her so good.
Guys, being black is not a disability. Are you kidding me? You know, now, I always try to kind of understand where they're coming from, right? And not just take the words out of context. Blacks are not being restricted from voting anymore, right? So I understand what she means by disabled. So, you know, if there were, I'm trying to think of like I think there was at one point in time, there was like the black codes, like Jim Crow, like if you couldn't read, you couldn't vote, right? So, and then a lot of black people couldn't read right after slavery. And, you know, as well, we had segregation and all of that. There was a lot of low literacy rates among African Americans in the United States. So it was like, well, if you can't read, you can't vote. But they did that mainly because a lot of black people couldn't read. And so that was at that point in time, the lack of being able to read disabled, made them unable to vote. But these days, that is not the case. Being black is not simply a disability. There is no system that is disabling black people from voting. I have a feeling that you're going to see Section 2 here of the Voting Rights Act narrowed, and you are going to see a new look at how district lines are drawn in the United States, right? So, in summary with this, the reason why this happens, the reason why this is an issue right now, and the reason why there's a challenge, all right? States feel forced to use race right now because of how the courts over time have interpreted Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act. States are worrying that if they ignore race, they will get sued for diluting minority voting power. So they often consider race directly. They go too far. They go, not only are we considering race, we're doing it based on race, right? Look, go us. Sometimes they use racial data to ensure enough minority voters are grouped together to satisfy Section 2, but it's not a requirement. Remember, Section 2 is almost like it's like guidelines. In effect, even though the statute doesn't say use race explicitly, the case law and enforcement risk make states feel like they should use law. So they're kind of intimidated and pressured into using race more so than they should. This is what leads most people to say and call it race-based gerrymandering or racial sorting. The constitutional problem comes because the U.S. Constitution's Equal Protection Clause, the 14th Amendment, says the government cannot classify people by race except in very limited circumstances. So the tension is between the Voting Rights Act as interpreted, not as written. And this also comes to another problem. It's as interpreted. Well, we can interpret it in any way we want. I can interpret water as being dry, even though it's wet. I could just change the definition of the words and then boom, water is dry, right? The way it's been interpreted pushes states to use race, again, more so than they should. They go overboard to more than meet the requirement and say, look, I mean, this is a black district. We're good here. But the Constitution tells them not to. That is why Louisiana and Kalis, Allen versus Milligan, and Shaw versus Reno ask how much race is too much race when it comes to drawing maps. Most states do not want to risk violating the Voting Rights Act, so they err on the side of caution. They often draw race-based districts to show compliance, even if the law explicitly doesn't mandate it. So now what they're looking to do, these challenges in Louisiana, is to say if a state is going that overboard, that's actually unconstitutional. It violates the Equal Protection Clause in the 14th Amendment. The Supreme Court now seems ready to limit how far Section 2 can push states towards these race-based maps, okay, which is a huge development when it comes to redistricting. They may rule, that compliance with Section 2 cannot justify predominant use of race, meaning states could focus more on traditional districting principles like geography, compactness, and communities of interest. The Voting Rights Act does not require it, as written, does not require race-based maps. But because of past court rulings, lawsuits, states often go overboard and use race to avoid being accused of racial discrimination, which in and of itself is racial discrimination against anybody who's not a member of the race that owns that district. The Supreme Court might soon redefine how much racial consideration is allowed or required when drawing those maps. So this is going to be big. It's going to be interesting to see where the chips fall and what states are, quote unquote, allowed to do going forward. All right.
We're at 800.
We're at 800 already.
Yeah.
At 9:30 in the morning, 10:30 in the morning. All right. Here's Mo. Thank you so much. 800. We throw him.
Wahoo.
We catch him.
Bad Moon's not around, so I got to do the wahoo.
Where is he?
He's on a hunting trip.
Oh, he's on a hunting trip.
Yeah.
Good. Nice.
Like a long one.
All right, so Bad Moon's not here, but we got Mo. See, we're hitting Mo faster when Bad Moon's not here. I'm going to bust his chops when he comes back.
It's all his fault.
It's all his fault.
Yeah. Wow.
It's like a protest against Bad Moon when he's here.
is.
Don't do that, by the way. Always hit the thumbs up button. All right, we're going to end our streams over on YouTube and X. So I want to say thank you to everybody who's watching over on YouTube and watching over on X. Head over to rumble.com/LFA TV. That is home base. That is the Cool Kids table. That's where the best live chat in the world is. You can see it right here. Rumble.com/LFA TV. If you want to be a part of the live chat, rumble.com/LFA TV. Goodbye to YouTube.